Jordan Miles never imagined that opening the wrong door would change everything. One second, he was a struggling black single dad, invisible in the corporate machine of Stratton Dynamics, drowning in debt, racing against time, fighting to give his daughter Ava the life she deserved. The next second, he was staring at CEO Evelyn Stratton in the most compromising moment of his career. His heart stopped. His future flashed before his eyes. In corporate America, a black man doesn't get second chances for mistakes like this. But what if this wasn't a mistake? What if fate just kicked down the door to a life he never dared to dream of? Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Stratton Dynamics hummed with the same indifferent drone they always did, casting their sterile glow across the maze of cubicles and conference rooms that made up the fifth floor. Jordan Miles moved through these corridors like a man underwater, every step deliberate, every breath measured, every movement calculated to take up as little space as possible. He'd learned this dance over the past 3 years, learned it the hard way. His worn leather messenger bag, a gift from his late wife, Sarah, back when hope wasn't such a fragile thing, bounced against his hip as he speed-walked toward conference room 507. The quarterly reports were due in exactly 14 minutes, and Jordan was already cutting it close. His manager, Derek Hutchins, didn't believe in excuses, especially not from someone like Jordan. Someone like Jordan. The phrase echoed in his mind with bitter familiarity. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jordan didn't need to look to know it was another text from Ava's school. The aftercare program had raised their rates again, and he was behind on payments. Again. His 7-year-old daughter's face flashed in his mind, those bright eyes, that gap-toothed smile that could light up his darkest days. She deserved better than this constant scramble, this endless tightrope walk between keeping food on the table and keeping the lights on. "Excuse me," Jordan murmured, sidestepping a group of junior executives who didn't bother to acknowledge his existence. He was 34 years old, held a degree in business analytics from a state school he'd attended on scholarship, and had innovative ideas that could revolutionize Stratton's supply chain management. But in the eyes of most people here, he was just another body filling a diversity quota, invisible until he made a mistake. And Jordan Miles could not afford to make mistakes. He rounded the corner, nearly colliding with Patricia from HR, who gave him a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Cutting it close again, Jordan?" "Traffic," he lied smoothly, though they both knew he took the bus. His 12-year-old Honda had died 6 months ago, and the money to fix it kept getting diverted to more pressing emergencies. Ava's asthma medication, the electricity bill, the mountain of medical debt from Sarah's final hospitalization that still haunted his credit score. Patricia's smile sharpened. "Derek's already in a mood. You might want to hustle." "Thanks for the heads up." Jordan forced warmth into his voice, though his stomach clenched. He picked up his pace, his dress shoes, the only pair he owned that still looked presentable, clicking against the polished floor. Conference room 507 should have been straight ahead, third door on the right. Jordan had walked this route 100 times. But as he approached, he noticed something odd. The usual placard outside the conference room was gone, replaced by a temporary paper sign that read 510. He frowned, confusion slowing his steps. Had they changed the room assignments? It wouldn't be the first time facilities had shuffled things around without telling anyone below director level. Jordan glanced at his watch, 11 minutes now, and made a split-second decision. The door that used to be 507 was right here. Even if the number had changed, the layout was the same. He reached for the handle. This was the moment, the hinge of fate that would swing his entire life in a direction he never could have anticipated. But Jordan Miles didn't know that yet. All he knew was that he was late. His daughter needed him to keep this job, and Derek Hutchins was waiting. Jordan pushed open the door. The scene that greeted him seemed to unfold in slow motion, each detail searing itself into his memory with excruciating clarity. The conference room, except it wasn't a conference room anymore, or at least not the one he'd expected, was smaller, more intimate. Late morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline, and there, in the center of the room, was a woman. Not just any woman. Evelyn Stratton. The CEO of Stratton Dynamics stood with her back partially to the door, in the process of changing from a tailored blazer into what appeared to be a fresh blouse for an upcoming video conference. For one eternal second, Jordan's brain refused to process what he was seeing. Then reality crashed down like an avalanche. Evelyn's head snapped toward the door, her eyes wide with shock. Jordan saw her face cycle through surprise, confusion, and the beginning of something that might have been anger or fear. He couldn't tell because his own panic had already seized control of his body. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out of Jordan's mouth as he stumbled backward, his messenger bag catching on the door handle. Papers exploded from the bag in a cascade of white. His reports, his notes, 3 years of trying to prove himself, scattering across the threshold like evidence of his catastrophic mistake. Wait, Evelyn started to say, but Jordan wasn't waiting. Jordan was moving. He yanked his bag free, abandoned the papers, and fled down the hallway with his heart hammering so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. Behind him, he heard the door close, softly, not slammed, but that almost made it worse. The quiet dignity of it. The measured response of someone who held all the power while he had none. This is it, Jordan thought as he careened around a corner, nearly bowling over an intern carrying coffee. This is how it ends. 3 years of biting my tongue, working twice as hard, staying twice as late, gone in 3 seconds. He didn't stop moving until he reached the men's bathroom on the 3rd floor, far enough away that no one from his department would find him immediately. Jordan locked himself in a stall and braced his hands against the walls, trying to remember how to breathe. His reflection in the polished metal of the partition showed a man coming apart at the seams, eyes too wide, skin ashen beneath its brown tones, tie askew. Stupid, 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 he whispered to himself, pressing the heels of his palms against his eyes. How could you be so stupid? But even as he said it, Jordan knew this wasn't about stupidity. He'd opened the door he always opened, walked the route he always walked. Someone had changed the room assignments. Someone had failed to communicate that change effectively. But none of that would matter. What mattered was the optics. What mattered was the narrative that would now write itself. Black male employee walks in on female CEO while she's changing. Claims it was an accident. Jordan's phone buzzed again. The school, probably, or another bill collector. He couldn't look. Couldn't think about anything except the fundamental unfairness of the equation playing out in his head. If he'd been Brandon or Kyle or any of the white junior analysts, this would be an embarrassing story, maybe, told over drinks at the holiday party. Remember that time I walked in on Evelyn Stratton? Classic mix-up. But Jordan wasn't Brandon or Kyle. Jordan was a black man in corporate America, where every mistake was evidence, every accident was suspicious, and every encounter with a white woman carried the weight of 400 years of ugly history. He thought of Ava, waiting for him at her after-school program, probably drawing pictures or reading one of the library books they'd checked out last week. She loved stories about scientists and explorers, people who discovered new worlds. What would Jordan tell her tonight when he came home without a job? How would he explain that Daddy had lost everything because he opened the wrong door? Pull it together, Jordan told himself firmly. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe she'll understand. Maybe, but even he couldn't finish that sentence with conviction. 20 minutes later, Jordan forced himself to leave the bathroom. He moved through the building like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. When he finally reached his cubicle, he found Derek Hutchins waiting with his arms crossed and his expression thunderous. Care to explain why you missed the quarterly review? Derek demanded. And why your papers are scattered all over the executive floor? Executive floor. Of course. The room he'd entered hadn't been on the 5th floor at all. Somehow, in his haste and confusion, Jordan had gone up instead of straight. He'd breached the sanctum, the 14th floor, where the C-suite resided, where people like him only went when summoned. There was a mix-up with the room assignments, Jordan started, but Derek cut him off with a sharp gesture. Save it. Patricia from HR wants to see you. Now. Derek's voice dropped lower. Whatever you did, Miles, I told them you were one of the good ones. Don't make me look like a liar. One of the good ones. The phrase hung in the air between them, toxic and familiar. Jordan wanted to scream that he was a person, not a category, that he hadn't done anything except walk through the wrong door. But he'd learned long ago that screaming only proved people's worst assumptions right. "Yes, sir," Jordan said quietly, gathering his things with numb fingers. The walk to HR felt like a death march. Jordan passed colleagues who suddenly found their computer screens fascinating, who turned away in conversations he wasn't meant to hear. Word traveled fast in places like this. He wondered what version of the story was circulating, how much worse it had gotten in the telling. Patricia's office was decorated with motivational posters about synergy and team building. She sat behind her desk with her hands folded, wearing an expression of professional concern that set Jordan's teeth on edge. "Have a seat, Jordan." He sat, spine straight, hands clasped in his lap, every inch the model of cooperative compliance. This, too, was part of the dance. Show no anger, show no fear, certainly show no hint of the rage burning in his chest at the fundamental injustice of this moment. "I'm sure you know why you're here," Patricia began. "There was an incident this morning," Jordan said carefully. "A misunderstanding with the conference room locations. I opened the wrong door. An executive's private changing room," Patricia interrupted gently. "You understand how serious this is? The appearance of impropriety?" "It was an accident," Jordan said, keeping his voice level. "The room assignments weren't clearly marked. I was rushing to make a meeting and went to where I thought—" "I believe you," Patricia said, and for a moment Jordan felt a flicker of hope. Then she continued, "But it's not about what I believe. It's about protocols. Miss Stratton was understandably shaken by the incident." "Did she say that?" Jordan interrupted before he could stop himself. "Did Ms. Stratton actually file a complaint? Or are we just assuming she's traumatized?" Patricia's expression hardened slightly. "We don't wait for formal complaints to address situations that could constitute harassment, Jordan. You know that. We're proactive here." Proactive about black men, Jordan thought, but didn't say. Never quite so proactive about the VP who comments on the interns' bodies, or the director who makes Asian employees explain their exotic lunches in the break room. "What happens now?" he asked instead. "We're conducting an investigation," Patricia said. "You'll be placed on administrative leave while we review the incident, with pay," she added, as if that made it better. "It's standard procedure." Administrative leave. The corporate kiss of death dressed up in bureaucratic language. Jordan's hands tightened in his lap, but he kept his face neutral. "How long?" "These things typically take a few days to a week. We'll be interviewing witnesses, reviewing security footage." "There weren't any witnesses," Jordan said, "and I doubt there's footage of executive changing rooms." "Nevertheless," Patricia slid a form across the desk. "I need you to sign this acknowledging that you've been informed of the leave and that you understand the investigation process. You're also required to have no contact with Ms. Stratton during this time." No contact with the CEO, as if Jordan had her personal number, as if they traveled in the same orbits. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so devastating. He signed the form with a hand that barely shook. He was proud of that. And stood. "Can I at least get my things from my desk?" "Of course, I'll walk with you." Because they didn't trust him even for that. Jordan collected his few personal items under Patricia's watchful eye. A photo of Ava, a coffee mug she'd decorated with handprint flowers, a succulent plant that had somehow survived 3 years of his neglect. His colleagues studiously ignored the spectacle, but Jordan felt their glances like knives between his shoulder blades. The security guard at the front desk, Marcus, who usually joked with Jordan about basketball scores, avoided his eyes as Jordan handed over his access badge. "Temporary surrender," they said. "Pending investigation," they said. Jordan walked out of Stratton Dynamics at 11:43 on a Tuesday morning carrying a cardboard box of his career and no idea how he would survive the next week, let alone the rest of his life. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. Jordan sat in the back, staring out the window as the gleaming downtown towers gave way to the weathered neighborhoods of South Oakland. His phone kept buzzing, more bills, more demands, more reminders that his financial house of cards was balanced on the assumption of a steady paycheck. "Administrative leave with pay," Patricia had said. But Jordan knew how these things worked. The investigation would conclude that while there was no evidence of intentional wrongdoing, there had been a serious lapse in judgment. His position would be eliminated in the next round of restructuring. He'd be given a modest severance package and a recommendation letter so neutral it might as well be an accusation. And he'd joined the ranks of black professionals with unexplained gaps in their employment history, trying to explain to the next interviewer why his last job ended without quite being able to tell the truth. By the time Jordan reached his apartment, a modest two-bedroom in a building that had seen better days, his phone showed 3 missed calls from Ava's school and a voicemail from his landlord about next month's rent. He stood in his living room, surrounded by the evidence of a life held together with duct tape and determination, secondhand furniture, Ava's colorful drawings taped to every wall, stacks of library books and homework assignments. This was supposed to be temporary. After Sarah died, Jordan had promised himself and Ava that he'd build them back up, that they'd recover from the medical bills and the grief and find their way to something better. The job at Stratton Dynamics was supposed to be the foundation of that future. 3 years of proving himself, of swallowing his pride and doing the work and waiting for his moment. And he'd lost it all because he opened the wrong door. Jordan sat down heavily on the couch, still holding his box of belongings. The succulent plant tipped over, spilling dirt on Ava's handprint mug. He stared at the mess for a long moment, then carefully righted the plant and brushed the soil away. "Not in front of Ava," he whispered to himself. It was a rule he'd made after Sarah's funeral, after he'd found his daughter standing in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, trying to make breakfast because she'd heard him crying in the next room. Whatever else happened, whatever else he lost, Ava would not see him break. She'd already lost too much. Jordan checked his watch. 2 more hours until school pickup. He should use this time to update his resume, start searching for new positions, maybe call the handful of professional contacts he'd carefully cultivated. But his body felt encased in concrete, and his mind kept replaying that moment. Evelyn Stratton's face, the shock in her eyes, the paper scattering like his demolished future. Had she looked angry, frightened? Or had there been something else in her expression, something Jordan had missed in his panic? It didn't matter. Whatever she'd felt, whatever she'd thought, the machinery of corporate America was already grinding him up. Patricia's concerned professionalism, Derek's disappointment, Marcus's averted eyes, these were the stages of his exit, as predictable as a play he'd seen performed too many times before. Jordan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Miles? This is Dr. Chen from Oakland Elementary. I'm calling about Ava." His heart lurched. "Is she okay? Did something happen?" "She's fine, physically," Dr. Chen assured him quickly. "But she got into an altercation at lunch. Another student made some comments about her hair, and Ava reacted. Nothing violent," she added hastily, "but we do need to discuss it. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" Another meeting. Another situation requiring his time and attention and emotional resources he no longer had. "Of course," Jordan said. "What time?" After Dr. Chen hung up, Jordan let his head fall back against the couch. Above him, one of Ava's drawings showed a family of 3 stick figures, him, Sarah, and Ava, standing in front of a house with a garden. She'd drawn it last year, still holding on to memories of their old life before everything fell apart. His daughter was getting into fights at school. His job was circling the drain. His savings account, what little existed, would last maybe 3 weeks if he was very, very careful. And somewhere in a corner office on the 14th floor of Stratton Dynamics, Evelyn Stratton was probably signing off on his termination without a second thought. Jordan closed his eyes. From somewhere in the building, he heard music playing, children laughing, life continuing around him with perfect indifference to his personal catastrophe. The afternoon sun slanted through his window, warming his face. He thought about that moment again, really thought about it, forcing himself past the panic. Evelyn Stratton's expression. The way she'd started to say wait before he'd fled. The soft click of the door closing, not slammed. What if? No. Jordan shut down that line of thinking immediately. It led nowhere good. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore, and reading kindness into the actions of powerful people was how you ended up disappointed. Evelyn Stratton was the CEO of a major corporation. She had lawyers and PR teams and all the machinery of institutional power behind her. What did it matter if she'd looked more surprised than angry? The outcome would be the same. Jordan's phone buzzed one more time. He glanced at it, expecting another bill or another crisis. Instead, he saw a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Miles, this is Evelyn Stratton's executive assistant. Ms. Stratton would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please confirm your availability. Jordan stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure he understood, then 4 times. 5. A meeting. Not a termination notice, not a cease and desist letter. A meeting. His hands trembled as he typed back, "I'll be there." But as Jordan sat in his modest apartment, surrounded by the evidence of a life he was barely keeping together, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being summoned to his execution. CEOs didn't personally fire individual employees unless they wanted to make an example of them, unless the offense was so egregious that it required a personal touch. Jordan thought of Ava's drawing, of her gap-toothed smile, of the way she still believed her daddy could fix anything. He thought of Sarah, who'd made him promise to be strong, to give their daughter everything. And he thought of that moment in the doorway, of Evelyn Stratton's eyes meeting his, of the terrible, infinite second when both their futures hung in the balance. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., he would learn which way that balance had tipped. Tomorrow, he would discover whether opening the wrong door had destroyed his life or... But Jordan couldn't complete that thought. Hoping for anything other than destruction felt like asking the universe for another kick in the teeth. He'd learned that lesson already, in hospitals and funeral homes and late-night calls from bill collectors. The universe didn't reward people like Jordan Miles with miracles. It tested them. It took and took and took, until there was nothing left but the grim determination to survive one more day. So Jordan pushed himself off the couch, cleaned up the spilled dirt, and started making dinner for his daughter, because that's what he did. That's what he'd always done. He survived, he endured, and he made sure Ava never knew how close they were to falling through the cracks. But later that night, after he'd picked up Ava from school and listened to her chatter about playground politics and upcoming science projects, after he'd helped with homework and made mac and cheese, and read 3 chapters of their current library book, after his daughter had finally fallen asleep in her bed decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars, Jordan allowed himself one moment of dangerous possibility. He stood at his window, looking out at the Oakland skyline where the Stratton Dynamics building rose like a sentinel, its windows glowing in the darkness. Somewhere up there, on the 14th floor, Evelyn Stratton might be looking out at this same city, thinking about tomorrow's meeting. What did she see when she looked at Jordan Miles? A threat? A mistake? A problem to be solved? Or had she seen something else in that brief, terrible moment? Something that made her pause, made her think, made her decide to offer a meeting instead of a pink slip? Jordan didn't know. Couldn't know. But as he finally climbed into bed, exhausted and anxious and terrified of tomorrow, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a very long time. Curiosity. About what came next. About what door might open if he was brave enough to walk through it. He was about to find out. The morning of the meeting arrived with cruel brightness. Jordan woke at 5:30, his body refusing the mercy of sleep despite having tossed and turned until nearly 3 a.m. He lay in bed listening to the sounds of his building waking up. Mrs. Chen upstairs starting her tea kettle, the Jackson twins arguing over the bathroom, someone's alarm playing the same tinny pop song it played every morning. Normal sounds. A normal day for everyone except him. Jordan showered in water that never quite got hot enough, shaved with a disposable razor that was 2 weeks past its prime, and stood in front of his closet trying to decide what a man wore to his own execution. The navy suit, his interview suit, the one he'd bought at a discount store and had tailored by Mrs. Martinez down the street for $40. The white shirt, pressed last night with an iron that sometimes spit steam unexpectedly. The tie Sarah had given him on their last anniversary together, burgundy silk with thin silver stripes. His reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a man playing dress-up, pretending to belong in a world that had already decided he didn't. "Daddy?" Ava's voice came through the door, small and worried. "Are you okay?" Jordan opened the door to find his daughter standing in her pajamas, the ones with the planets on them that she'd picked out at Target 3 months ago, already getting too short in the legs. Her hair needed attention, the careful braiding he'd learned from YouTube videos after Sarah died. Another skill he'd acquired out of necessity, added to the list of things single fathers had to teach themselves. "I'm fine, baby girl," he said, kneeling down to her level. "Just getting ready for work." "But you've been home." Ava's eyes, so much like her mother's, searched his face. You came home early yesterday and you were sad. You tried to hide it, but I could tell. 7 years old and already too perceptive. Jordan pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I had a weird day yesterday, but today's going to be better. I promise. It was a promise he had no right to make, but parents lied to their children all the time in the name of protection. Jordan had gotten very good at it. He made Ava's breakfast, oatmeal with cinnamon and the last of their honey, and braided her hair while she ate, his fingers moving through the familiar patterns. French braids today, neat and tight, the way she liked them. As he worked, Ava chattered about her upcoming science fair project. I want to do something about plants, she said between spoonfuls of oatmeal. Like how they grow toward the light. Mrs. Patterson says it's called photo something. Phototropism, Jordan supplied automatically. That's a good topic. Will you help me? Of course. Another promise he might not be able to keep, depending on how the next few hours went. We'll go to the library this weekend, get some books about it. Ava twisted to look at him, braids half finished. You always say that, about the library, like it's special. It is special, Jordan said, guiding her head back around so he could finish. Libraries are places where anyone can go and learn anything. Doesn't matter who you are or how much money you have. The knowledge is just there, waiting. Is that why we go there so much? Because we don't have money? The question landed like a punch. Jordan's hand stilled in her hair for just a moment before resuming their work. We go there because books are treasures, and treasures should be shared. Done. Go check in the mirror. Ava scampered off to admire her braids, and Jordan allowed himself 30 seconds of leaning against the kitchen counter, eyes closed, breathing through the constant low-grade panic that had become his baseline existence. The meeting was in 7 hours. He needed to drop Ava at school, spend those hours not falling apart, and then face whatever judgment Evelyn Stratton had decided to render. The bus ride to Ava's school took 20 minutes. Jordan held his daughter's hand and listened to her narrate the passing scenery. That's where the dog lives that always barks. That's the store that has the good candy. That's where her friend Maya used to live before her family moved away. A 7-year-old's map of the world, measured in small landmarks and simple truths. At the school gates, Jordan kissed her forehead. Remember, I'm picking you up today, not the aftercare program. Why? Because I want to. The truth was more complicated. He'd been placed on administrative leave, might not have a job by this afternoon, and wanted to spend the time with his daughter while he could still pretend everything was normal. But 7-year-olds didn't need that burden. Okay, Ava brightened, always happy for more daddy time. She hugged him tight around the middle, then ran off to join her friends, braids bouncing. Jordan watched until she disappeared into the building, then turned and walked back toward the bus stop with the weight of the coming hours pressing down on his shoulders. He spent the morning in motion, unable to sit still. Cleaned the apartment even though it was already clean. Organized the bills by due date, then by amount owed, then gave up and shoved them all back in the drawer. Updated his resume with trembling hands, adding bullet points to his Stratton Dynamics experience while wondering if it would all become a single line. Data analyst 2022-2025, left under unfortunate circumstances. At noon, Jordan made himself eat something, a peanut butter sandwich he barely tasted. At 12:30, he changed his shirt because he'd managed to get a coffee stain on it despite not remembering drinking coffee. At 1 o'clock, he left his apartment and began the journey downtown, his suit jacket folded over his arm because the day had turned unseasonably warm. The bus was crowded with the lunch hour rush. Jordan stood near the back, holding the overhead rail, watching Oakland slide past the windows. He'd lived in this city his whole life. Born at Highland Hospital, raised in a small house in Fruitvale that his parents had lost during the 2008 crash, married Sarah at the courthouse downtown, brought Ava home to their first apartment off International Boulevard. This was his city, built on his family's labor and dreams and broken promises. And somewhere in its gleaming heart, in a tower of glass and steel, a woman he'd seen for 3 seconds was about to decide his fate. Jordan arrived at Stratton Dynamics at 1:40, early because being late was not an option his life afforded. The security desk was different from his usual entrance. This was the main lobby, all polished marble and abstract art, the public face of corporate success. The guard was someone Jordan didn't recognize, which meant Jordan didn't have to see pity or judgment in familiar eyes. "Jordan Miles," he said, producing his ID. "I have a meeting with Ms. Stratton at 2. The guard checked his tablet, then handed Jordan a visitor's badge. A visitor. To the building where he'd worked for 3 years. The badge felt like a brand, marking him as an outsider. 14th floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride up was smooth and silent, the kind of engineering money could buy. Jordan watched the numbers climb. 5th floor, where his cubicle sat empty. 9th floor, where Derek probably sat fuming about his absence. 14th floor, where the air itself felt more expensive. The doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it belonged in an art gallery, all clean lines and muted colors, and a receptionist who smiled with professional warmth. "Mr. Miles, Ms. Stratton is expecting you. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway that seemed designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows on one side showing the city sprawling below, original artwork on the other, everything screaming success and power and permanence. Jordan's shoes made no sound on the carpet, probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. The receptionist stopped at a door, knocked once, then opened it. "Mr. Miles is here." "Thank you, Jennifer. Send him in." Evelyn Stratton's voice was composed, professional, giving nothing away. Jordan took a breath, squared his shoulders, and walked into the office of the woman whose life he'd accidentally invaded. The office was large, but not ostentatious, with a massive desk facing windows that offered a panoramic view of Oakland and the bay beyond. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, filled with business text and what looked like first editions of classic literature. A sitting area with 2 leather chairs occupied the corner, and it was there that Evelyn Stratton stood, gesturing for him to join her. She was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, her dark hair pulled back in a simple twist. Jordan's impression of her from their brief, disastrous encounter had been fragmented. Shock, embarrassment, the jumbled details of crisis. Now he saw her clearly. A woman in her late 30s, tall and composed, with intelligent eyes that studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Mr. Miles, thank you for coming." She didn't offer her hand, which Jordan appreciated. He wasn't sure he could have shaken it without his trembling becoming obvious. "Please, sit." Jordan sat in one of the leather chairs, keeping his spine straight, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. Every gesture calibrated to project calm professionalism while his heart hammered against his ribs. Evelyn sat across from him, and for a moment neither spoke. The silence stretched, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. Jordan had learned to read silences. They were often more telling than words. This one felt like assessment, like she was taking his measure the same way he was taking hers. "I imagine," Evelyn finally said, "that the past 24 hours have been difficult for you." It was so far from what Jordan had expected that he almost laughed. That's one way to put it. "I want to start by being very clear about something." Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her eyes direct. "What happened yesterday was an accident, a mistake caused by a last-minute room change that facilities failed to communicate properly. I know this because I checked. The placards outside were changed, but the digital scheduling system still showed the old room numbers. You went where you were supposed to go based on the information you had." Jordan felt something unlock in his chest, but he didn't dare hope yet. "HR seems to think—" "HR has protocols," Evelyn interrupted, her tone taking on a slight edge. "Protocols that exist for good reasons. But protocols can also become weapons if we're not careful about how we apply them. You were placed on administrative leave as part of a standard investigation. That investigation is now complete. As of this moment, you are no longer on leave." "I'm not fired." Jordan heard himself say the words, needed to hear them confirmed. "You're not fired." A slight smile touched Evelyn's mouth. "Though I understand that the experience of waiting for this meeting might have felt like a form of torture. For that, I apologize." "Why?" The question came out before Jordan could stop it. "I mean, not why apologize, but why am I here? You could have had HR give me my badge back, and that would be the end of it." Evelyn stood and walked to her desk, picking up a bound document that Jordan recognized with a jolt. His proposal. The supply chain optimization system he'd spent 6 months developing on his own time, researching and refining, trying to make it perfect before submitting it through the proper channels. He turned it in 3 months ago and heard nothing back. I read this last night, Evelyn said, returning to her chair with the document in hand. Actually, I read it twice. Do you know why I hadn't seen it before yesterday? Jordan shook his head, not trusting his voice. Because it was flagged by middle management as interesting but not a priority, and shuffled into a queue that I never see unless I specifically ask for it. Evelyn's expression hardened. Which is a problem I'm going to address. But setting that aside, this is brilliant work, Mr. Miles. Innovative, thoroughly researched, and with implementation steps that actually make sense. You've identified inefficiencies that are costing us millions annually, and you've proposed solutions that are both practical and scalable. Jordan stared at her, his mind struggling to process this sudden pivot from survival to validation. Thank you. I've been working in supply chain analytics for 3 years, and I kept seeing these patterns, which is exactly what I need. Evelyn set the document on the table between them. I want you to lead a pilot project implementing these ideas, not as a data analyst in Derek Hutchins' department, but as a project lead reporting directly to my chief operations officer. You'd have a team, a budget, and 6 months to prove the concept. The words seemed to rearrange themselves in Jordan's head, refusing to make sense. This wasn't how his life worked. People like Jordan didn't go from administrative leave to leading projects. They didn't get promoted after walking in on the CEO. They certainly didn't get offered opportunities that sounded like the exact thing they'd been desperately hoping for since they started at this company. I don't understand, Jordan said slowly. Yesterday I was being investigated for harassment. Today you're offering me a promotion? Yesterday you were being investigated because we have protocols that protect everyone, including you, by ensuring all incidents are properly reviewed. Today, the investigation is complete, and I'm offering you a position based on the merit of your work. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. These are separate matters, Mr. Miles. The fact that they happened in proximity doesn't change the reality of either one. But people won't see it that way. Jordan heard himself giving voice to the fear that had been eating at him. They'll think. They already think. What do they think? The question was gentle but direct. Jordan met Evelyn's eyes and saw genuine curiosity there, maybe even concern. She wanted the truth, not the polite deflection he'd learned to offer in corporate spaces. They think I'm a diversity hire who got lucky, Jordan said quietly. They think I'm filling a quota. And now, after this, after walking in on you, they're going to think I'm being promoted because you're afraid I'll file some kind of complaint, or lawsuit, or worse. He didn't elaborate on the worse, but they both knew what he meant. The ugly possibilities that lived in the space between a black man and a white woman. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. When she spoke, her voice was measured but firm. You're right. Some people will think those things. Some people have probably been thinking versions of those things since the day you started here, and I can't control what exists in other people's minds. She leaned forward again, her intensity almost palpable. But here's what I can control. The decisions I make based on merit, data, and the needs of this company. Your proposal is excellent. We need someone with your analytical skills and your willingness to challenge existing systems. I'm offering you this position because you've earned it through your work, not because of what happened yesterday. And if I say no, Jordan asked, testing the boundaries of this surreal conversation, then you return to your previous position with no repercussions, and I'll find someone else to lead the project, though it won't be as good without you. A slight smile. I believe in being honest, Mr. Miles. I want you for this because you're the best person for it. But I also understand if the circumstances make it impossible for you to accept. Jordan thought about his daughter, about the bills stacked in his kitchen drawer, about the worn shoes and the bus rides, and the constant calculation of what he could and couldn't afford. He thought about Ava's science fair project, about her dreams that shouldn't be limited by his fears, about the promise he'd made to Sarah that he'd give their daughter everything. And he thought about the proposal sitting between them, months of his best thinking, his clearest vision of how things could be better. The ideas he'd been too afraid to voice in meetings, too conditioned to staying small and safe. What would the position pay? He asked, and saw approval flash in Evelyn's eyes at the practical question. She named a figure that was nearly double his current salary. Not enough to make him rich, but enough to stop the constant drowning, enough to breathe, enough to maybe, just maybe, start building something stable. There's a team in place already? 3 analysts and a project coordinator. You'd have input on growing it if needed. Timeline for the pilot? 6 months to implementation, then 3 months of testing and refinement. After that, we evaluate for full-scale rollout. Jordan nodded slowly, his mind already racing through possibilities, challenges, the work that would need to happen. Then he caught himself and almost laughed at the absurdity. He'd gone from expecting to be fired to mentally planning a major corporate initiative in the span of 20 minutes. I need to be clear about something, Jordan said, meeting Evelyn's gaze directly. If I take this position, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to question assumptions, push back on that's how we've always done it, and probably make some people uncomfortable in the process. That's what the proposal does. It challenges the status quo. And I won't soften it just to make middle management feel better. Something shifted in Evelyn's expression, a spark of what might have been respect or amusement. Mr. Miles, if you weren't willing to challenge the status quo, I wouldn't want you for this position. Make people uncomfortable. Make them think. That's exactly what this company needs. Then yes, Jordan heard himself say, the words coming from some place of either courage or insanity. Yes, I'll do it. Evelyn extended her hand, and this time Jordan shook it. Her grip was firm, professional, the seal on an agreement that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Excellent. HR will contact you tomorrow with the paperwork and details. You'll start Monday. Take the rest of the week to transition mentally. She paused, then added, and Mr. Miles, I know this has been an unusual path to this conversation, but I want you to know that yesterday's incident is closed. It's not going to follow you around this building. Anyone who tries to weaponize it will answer to me personally. It was a promise Jordan wanted to believe but couldn't quite trust. He'd seen too much, lived through too many variations of how people like him got burned despite the best intentions of people in power. But he nodded, accepting the gesture if not fully embracing it. Thank you for this opportunity, for not... He paused, searching for words that wouldn't make him sound weak. For giving me a chance to explain yesterday, and for evaluating me on my work. You don't need to thank me for doing what should be standard, Evelyn said, but her tone was kind. Now go home to your daughter. Jennifer at the front desk has your new access badge, full executive clearance. Welcome to the team, Mr. Miles. Jordan left the office in a daze, accepted his new badge from Jennifer, and made it all the way to the elevator before the reality hit him. He leaned against the elevator wall as it descended, closed his eyes, and allowed himself 10 seconds of pure, unfiltered relief. Then he pulled out his phone and called the one person who would understand. Calvin? It's Jordan. You're not going to believe what just happened. His best friend's voice came through warm and familiar. Man, I've been worried sick. Talk to me. Jordan talked, explained the whole impossible sequence, the meeting, the proposal, the position he'd just accepted that felt like stepping through a door into an alternate universe where his luck didn't run consistently bad. Calvin listened, occasionally interjecting with disbelief or cautious celebration, and when Jordan finished, there was a long pause. So you went from thinking you're fired to being promoted in one meeting, Calvin said slowly. That's either the best turn of fortune I've ever heard, or a setup, Jordan finished. I know. Believe me, I've thought of every way this could go wrong. But you took it anyway. What else was I going to do? Keep grinding away in a cubicle while that proposal collected dust? Hope Derek eventually notices I exist? Jordan stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, nodding at the security guard who was now seeing him in a completely different context. Sometimes you have to bet on yourself, even when the odds feel wrong. Just be careful, Calvin said. Watch your back in there, document everything, and if anything feels off, I'll bail, I promise. Jordan pushed through the revolving doors into the afternoon sun, and the warmth on his face felt like absolution. Listen, I need to pick up Ava. Can I call you later? Anytime, brother. Proud of you. Scared for you, but proud. Jordan ended the call and started walking toward the bus stop, but his feet carried him past it. He needed to move, to process, to burn off the adrenaline still flooding his system. 3 blocks became 6, became 10. And suddenly Jordan found himself in the small park where he and Sarah used to bring Ava when she was a toddler. The playground equipment had been updated, but the oak tree was the same, its branches spreading wide and generous. Jordan sat on a bench beneath that tree and finally let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. Relief, terror, hope, suspicion. The collision of emotions was almost physical, leaving him breathless and shaky. He pulled out his phone and stared at the photo on his lock screen, Ava grinning at the camera, her gap-toothed smile pure joy. "We might be okay, baby girl," he whispered to the photo. "We might actually be okay." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Jordan had learned the hard way that fortune could reverse in an instant, that doors opened could slam shut just as quickly. He thought about the whispers that would follow him through Stratton Dynamics halls, the assumptions people would make, the way his colleagues would reevaluate every interaction through the lens of what they thought they knew. And he thought about Evelyn Stratton, sitting in her corner office, making decisions that seemed generous but might be strategic in ways Jordan couldn't yet see. She'd given him an opportunity, yes, but she'd also made him beholden. She'd elevated him in a way that would make him permanently associated with her judgment, her patronage. If he failed, it would reflect on her choice. If he succeeded, people would attribute it to her favor rather than his merit. Jordan stood and resumed walking, headed toward Ava's school now, checking his watch to make sure he wasn't late. The afternoon had shifted while he sat, shadows lengthening, the quality of light softening toward evening. By the time he reached the school gates, children were already streaming out, a river of bright backpacks and loud voices. He spotted Ava almost immediately. She'd somehow managed to get paint on her shirt despite it being Wednesday, not art day. She was talking animatedly to a girl Jordan recognized as Sophia from her class, her hands gesturing wildly to emphasize some point. Then she saw him and her whole face transformed. "Daddy!" She ran over and launched herself at him with the absolute confidence of a child who knows she'll be caught. Jordan scooped her up, spinning her once before setting her down. "You came. You actually came to get me." "I said I would, didn't I?" Jordan crouched to her level, adjusting the backpack that had gone askew during her run. "How was your day?" "Good. We started learning about the solar system and Mrs. Patterson said I could do my science project on phototropism like you said, and look." She thrust a piece of paper at him, covered in her careful printing. "I wrote down all the stuff we need to research at the library." Jordan scanned the list: plant biology, light spectrum, experimental design, 7-year-old curiosity filtered through teacher-approved topics. "This is great, Ava. We'll definitely hit the library this weekend. Can we go to the bookstore too, the one with the cat?" "Maybe." Which meant probably not, because the bookstore meant buying books they couldn't afford when the library had the same information for free. But Jordan had become expert at the art of maybe, that space between yes and no that let him avoid breaking his daughter's heart today while secretly planning disappointment for tomorrow. They walked to the bus stop hand in hand, Ava chattering about playground politics and upcoming field trips, and 1,000 small details that made up her world. Jordan listened with half his attention while the other half remained fixed on the impossibility of his afternoon. By tomorrow, people at Stratton would know about his new position. By Monday, he'd be walking into an entirely different role, leading a team, reporting to the COO, existing in spaces that had been closed to him just this morning. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. At home, Jordan made dinner. Spaghetti with marinara from a jar and a side of frozen vegetables he dressed up with garlic and a little parmesan. Not fancy, but Ava ate without complaint, still talking between bites. After dinner came homework, bath time, the nightly ritual of teeth brushing and pajama wrestling, and 3 stories before bed. Jordan was reading the second story, his voice soft in the lamplit room, when Ava interrupted him. "Daddy, are you happy?" He looked down at her, tucked under her comforter with its pattern of stars and planets. "What makes you ask that, baby girl?" "You seem different today, less worried." Her eyes, too wise for 7, studied his face. "Did something good happen at work?" Jordan set the book aside and pulled her blanket up higher, tucking it around her shoulders. "Something good did happen. Something that might make things a little easier for us. But you don't need to worry about grown-up stuff, okay? You just focus on your science project and being a kid." "Can we get a house?" Ava asked suddenly. "Like the one in my drawing? With a yard where I could plant things for my project? The question hurt more than it should have. Maybe someday, Jordan said, defaulting again to that careful space of non-commitment. But this apartment is pretty good, don't you think? We've made it nice. I guess. Ava yawned, fighting sleep even as her eyes started to droop. I just wish Mom could see it. Whatever made you happy today, she'd be happy too. Jordan's throat tightened. He leaned down and kissed Ava's forehead, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. She can see it, baby. I believe that. And you're right, she'd be happy. Now sleep. Big day tomorrow. Big day every day, Ava mumbled, already drifting off. Jordan sat with her for a few more minutes, watching her face relax into sleep, letting the peace of her presence settle his churning thoughts. Then he quietly left her room, pulling the door mostly closed but leaving it open enough that she could call for him if she needed to. In the living room, Jordan finally allowed himself to sit down and truly process the day. He pulled out his phone and opened the email from Jennifer that had come through an hour ago. Official confirmation of his new position, salary details, start date, a meeting scheduled with the COO for Friday to discuss project parameters. All of it real, documented, impossible to dismiss as wishful thinking or misunderstanding. Jordan Miles, project lead. Jordan Miles reporting to the executive team. Jordan Miles given a chance to prove that his ideas mattered, that his work had value beyond filling quotas or checking boxes. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing at the base of a mountain, looking up at a climb that might be more than he could handle. But then Jordan thought of Ava's question, "Can we get a house?" And he knew he'd make the climb anyway. Because the alternative was staying where he was, and that was no longer acceptable. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Looking forward to working with you on Monday. Let me know if you have questions before then. E.S. Evelyn Stratton had given him her personal number. The gesture felt significant, though Jordan wasn't sure exactly how. He typed back, "Thank you for the opportunity. See you Monday." Professional, appropriate, giving nothing away about the storm of emotion still roiling through him. He set the phone down and leaned back on the couch, staring at Ava's drawings that covered his walls like wallpaper. Her visions of their future, rendered in crayon and marker, an unshakable belief that her daddy could fix anything. Maybe he could. Maybe this was the beginning of something better, the door that led to all the other doors, the house with a yard, the stable future, the life where Ava didn't have to worry about whether they could afford bookstore visits. Or maybe it was a trap he was too desperate to see clearly, a setup that would blow up in his face in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Jordan wouldn't know until Monday. Until then, all he could do was prepare, hope, and try not to let the fear paralyze him completely. He pulled out his laptop and opened his proposal, reading through it with fresh eyes, making notes about implementation strategies, team structures, potential obstacles. If he was going to do this, he'd do it right. He'd be so undeniably good at this job that no one could claim he didn't deserve it. Hours passed. The building settled into nighttime quiet. Jordan worked until his eyes burned and his coffee had gone cold, building frameworks and contingency plans, preparing for a future that still felt fictional but was rapidly becoming real. And somewhere across the city, in a corner office with a view of the bay, Evelyn Stratton was probably doing the same. Though Jordan couldn't know that she was thinking about him, about the potential she'd seen beneath his obvious fear, about the gamble she was taking that went beyond business strategy into territory she wasn't ready to examine too closely. The game had changed for both of them. They just didn't realize yet how much. The first 3 weeks in Jordan's new role passed in a blur of strategic meetings, team introductions, and the careful navigation of corporate politics that came with sudden elevation. His new office, not a cubicle, an actual office with a door and a window, still felt like borrowed space, as if someone might realize the mistake and ask him to leave. But Jordan showed up every morning at 7:30, left no later than 5:15 so he could pick up Ava, and threw himself into the work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The whispers followed him everywhere. Jordan heard them in the deliberately casual conversations that stopped when he walked into the break room, saw them in the sidelong glances during departmental meetings, felt them in the way certain colleagues suddenly became very interested in their phones when he passed in the hallway. Derek Hutchins had been coldly professional during their handoff meeting, his disappointment at losing a team member barely concealed beneath corporate courtesy. Others were less subtle. "Must be nice," someone had muttered in the elevator on Jordan's second day, loud enough to be heard but soft enough to deny intent. "Some people get all the lucky breaks." Jordan had kept his eyes forward, his expression neutral, and said nothing. Engaging would only make it worse. Instead, he focused on the work, building relationships with his new team, diving deep into the supply chain data, preparing presentations for the COO that were so thoroughly researched they left no room for doubt about his competence. His team was cautiously receptive. The three analysts, Beth, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 40s who'd been passed over for promotion twice, Marcus, a recent MBA graduate hungry to prove himself, and Jin, who had a gift for data visualization that bordered on artistic, treated Jordan with professional courtesy that slowly warmed into something like respect as they saw the quality of his thinking. The project coordinator, Amanda, was harder to read, her efficient professionalism masking whatever she actually thought about her new boss. "We're going to question everything," Jordan had told them in their first team meeting. "Every assumption, every 'that's how we've always done it,' every inefficiency that's become invisible through familiarity. This project only works if we're willing to be uncomfortable." Beth had smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. About time someone said it out loud. The work itself was exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. Jordan found himself energized by the challenge, by having a team that actually listened to his ideas, by the autonomy to make decisions without running them through 5 layers of approval. But the stress was constant and multi-layered. The pressure to prove himself, the awareness that any mistake would be amplified, the knowledge that he was representing not just himself, but every other Black employee who might come after him. And beneath it all, the nagging question: why had Evelyn Stratton really given him this chance? He saw her occasionally in passing, a nod in the hallway, a brief exchange in the elevator, her presence at high-level meetings where Jordan now found himself presenting. She was always professional, always attentive to his presentations, asking pointed questions that showed she'd actually read his reports. But there was something else there too, a quality of attention that felt personal, even when the context was purely business. Jordan tried not to read too much into it, tried and largely failed. It was Thursday of his 3rd week when everything shifted. Jordan was deep in a financial model, trying to calculate the ROI on a proposed routing optimization, when his phone rang. Not his work line, his personal cell, the number only a handful of people had. He glanced at the screen. Oakland Elementary School. His stomach dropped. Ava. "This is Jordan Miles," he said, already standing, already reaching for his jacket. "Mr. Miles, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling because we haven't been able to reach Ava's emergency contact. What happened? Is she hurt?" Jordan's voice came out sharper than intended, fear making it harsh. "She's fine, physically. But there's been a situation. The aftercare program was supposed to stay open until 6 today due to a staff training, but there was a miscommunication and they closed at the regular time. Ava's been waiting at the front office for the past 45 minutes. We've been trying to call. I never got..." Jordan pulled the phone away from his ear long enough to see 3 missed calls, all during the meeting he'd just left where he'd silenced his phone. "I'm so sorry. I'm coming right now. Tell her I'm coming." He hung up and grabbed his bag, his mind already calculating. Bus would take too long, at least 45 minutes at this time of day. Uber would be faster, but would cost money he'd budgeted for groceries. His daughter was alone and scared and waiting for him, and Jordan was 8 miles away without a car because he still couldn't afford to fix the Honda. Jordan made it to the elevator, pressed the button 3 times in rapid succession as if that would make it arrive faster, and felt his chest tightening with the familiar pressure of everything being just slightly out of reach. The doors opened and he stepped in, barely registering that someone else was already inside until he heard her voice. "Jordan? Are you all right?" He looked up to find Evelyn Stratton studying him with concern. She was dressed for a meeting, navy suit, leather portfolio under one arm, but her attention was entirely focused on his face, which Jordan realized must be showing every ounce of his panic. "I'm fine. I just need to..." He stopped, the professional instinct to downplay and deflect warring with the reality that he didn't have time for pretense. "My daughter's school called. There was a mix-up with the aftercare program, and she's been waiting alone for almost an hour. I need to get there, but the bus... I'll drive you, Evelyn said immediately, pressing the button for the parking garage. You don't have to... Jordan. She cut him off gently but firmly. You need to get to your daughter quickly. I have a car. This is the obvious solution. We can discuss the professional boundaries later if you want, but right now let's just solve the immediate problem. The elevator reached the parking garage. Evelyn strode toward a silver Audi, unlocking it with a beep. Jordan hesitated for only a second before following. She was right. Ava was what mattered. Everything else could wait. The drive through Oakland's late afternoon traffic was tense and silent. Evelyn navigated with practiced efficiency, taking side streets Jordan didn't know existed, cutting what would have been a 45-minute bus ride down to 15 minutes of driving. Jordan sat in the passenger seat, his phone clutched in his hand, his mind playing out worst-case scenarios. Ava crying alone in the office, Ava thinking he'd forgotten her, Ava understanding, in the way children sometimes do, that her father's best efforts still weren't quite enough. She's okay, Evelyn said quietly, not taking her eyes off the road. She's safe, and she knows you're coming. Kids are resilient. She's 7, Jordan said, his voice raw. She shouldn't have to be resilient. She should be able to count on the adults in her life to just show up. You are showing up. You dropped everything the second you got the call. 45 minutes too late. Evelyn didn't respond to that, but her hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. She pulled into the school parking lot and barely had time to put the car in park before Jordan was out and moving toward the building. The front office was bright and cheerful, decorated with student artwork and motivational posters. And there, sitting in one of the plastic chairs that were sized for adults but felt too big, was Ava. She looked small and tired, her backpack at her feet, her braids slightly mussed. When she saw Jordan, her face crumpled. Daddy! Jordan crossed the space in 3 strides and dropped to his knees, pulling her into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. My phone was on silent, and I didn't see... I thought you forgot me, Ava said into his shoulder, her voice muffled and thick with tears she'd been holding back. Everyone else got picked up, and I was just sitting here, and I thought, I would never forget you. Never. Jordan pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands, wiping away the tears with his thumbs. There was a mix-up with the aftercare program, and I didn't get the message right away, but I came as fast as I could. You're the most important thing in my whole world, Ava. Nothing is more important than you. I know, Ava whispered, but her eyes were still uncertain, still carrying the weight of that hour spent waiting. Mr. Miles. Principal Morrison approached, her expression sympathetic. Again, I apologize for the confusion. We've had issues with the aftercare communication system before, and this really highlights why we need to address it. Thank you for staying with her, Jordan said, standing but keeping one hand on Ava's shoulder. I'll make sure my phone alerts are set differently so this doesn't... Jordan? Evelyn's voice came from the doorway. She'd followed him in, and now stood there with an expression Jordan couldn't quite read. Her attention was fixed on Ava with an intensity that seemed out of proportion to the situation. Ava looked up at the sound of the unfamiliar voice, her tears stopping midstream as curiosity took over. Who's that? This is Ms. Stratton, Jordan said carefully. She's my boss. She drove me here so I could get to you faster. Oh. Ava studied Evelyn with the frank assessment of childhood. You have a car? Something shifted in Evelyn's expression, a softening Jordan had never seen in their professional interactions. She moved closer and crouched down, bringing herself to Ava's eye level. I do. And your dad was so worried about you that he practically jumped out of the elevator before it stopped moving. He loves you very much. I know, Ava said again, but this time with more certainty. She looked between Evelyn and Jordan, her 7-year-old brain clearly trying to process the situation. Are you nice to my dad at work? Some people aren't nice to him. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. Jordan felt heat rise in his face, mortified that his daughter had somehow picked up on the undercurrents of his professional life. But Evelyn didn't seem surprised or uncomfortable. Instead, she met Ava's gaze directly. I try to be fair to everyone, including your dad. and I think he's very good at his job. He has smart ideas that help the company." She paused, then added, "You should be proud of him." "I am," Ava said simply. Then, with the lightning-quick mood shifts of childhood, she turned to Jordan. "Can we go home now? I'm hungry, and I have homework." The ride back was different from the tense silence of the drive there. Ava chattered from the back seat, her earlier distress already fading, as children's emotions tend to do, replaced by curiosity about the car, about Evelyn, about whether they could stop for French fries. Jordan mostly listened, occasionally catching Evelyn's eye in the rearview mirror, seeing something there he couldn't quite name. When they pulled up in front of Jordan's apartment building, Evelyn put the car in park and turned in her seat. "Ava, it was very nice to meet you. I hope the rest of your day is better." "Thank you for driving," Ava said with the careful politeness Jordan had taught her. Then with less formality, "Your car is really nice. It's way better than the bus." Evelyn smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from composed to genuinely warm. "I'm glad you think so." Jordan unbuckled Ava and helped her out, then leaned back into the car. "Thank you, really. You didn't have to—" "I know," Evelyn said quietly, "but I wanted to. Take care of her." "And Jordan?" She waited until he met her eyes. "You're a good father. She's lucky to have you." The words hit harder than they should have, landing in a place Jordan hadn't realized needed validation. He nodded, not trusting his voice, and closed the car door. Evelyn drove away as Jordan and Ava climbed the steps to their apartment, his daughter's hand small and trusting in his. Inside, the familiar routine took over: homework at the kitchen table while Jordan made dinner, bath time with extra bubbles because Ava had had a hard day, stories before bed. But Jordan's mind kept circling back to those 15 minutes in Evelyn's car, to the way she'd looked at Ava, to the expression on her face that had been something beyond professional courtesy. After Ava fell asleep, Jordan sat on his small balcony with a beer he couldn't really afford and his phone in his hand. He stared at Evelyn's number, the one she'd given him that first day, for a long time, before finally typing out a message. "Thank you again for today. You didn't have to help, but you did, and it meant more than I can explain. Ava's okay. We're okay. Jordan." The response came faster than he expected. "I'm glad she's okay. And Jordan, you don't have to thank me for basic human decency, though I realize that says something sad about the world we work in." Jordan found himself smiling at that, at the subtle acknowledgement of the dynamics they both knew existed. He typed back, "Still, it mattered." There was a longer pause this time, and Jordan assumed the conversation was over. He was about to set his phone down when it buzzed again. "Can I ask you something? And feel free to say no. This is outside any professional boundary, and I'll understand if you don't want to answer." Jordan's thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Okay, what did Ava mean when she said some people aren't nice to you at work?" The question landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading outward. Jordan could deflect, could offer some sanitized version that protected everyone's comfort, or he could tell the truth. He chose truth. "She sees more than I think she does. She sees me come home tired in ways that aren't just about the work. She sees me practice conversations in the mirror so I'll sound the right kind of confident, not threatening, not aggressive, just competent. She sees me smile at comments that aren't actually funny and let interruptions happen that shouldn't and bite my tongue when I want to push back. She's 7, and she already understands that the world treats people differently based on what they look like. I wish she didn't have to know that yet." The response didn't come immediately. Jordan watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times, as if Evelyn was typing and deleting, trying to find the right words. Finally, "I don't know what to say that doesn't sound hollow or privileged or like I'm trying to absolve myself of complicity in a system I benefit from. But I'm listening, and I'm trying to do better." "That's more than most people do," Jordan typed back. Then, because the conversation had already gone to places he hadn't expected, he added, "Can I ask you something now? Fair's fair. Why did you really give me this position? And don't say it's just because of my proposal. I need to know if I'm being set up to fail, or if there's some other agenda I'm not seeing." The pause was longer this time. Jordan watched the Oakland skyline, the lights of the city blinking on as darkness settled, and wondered if he'd just torpedoed whatever professional relationship they'd been building. Then his phone buzzed. Honest answer? I gave you the position because your work was excellent, and because I'm tired of watching talented people get overlooked due to 100 small biases that nobody wants to acknowledge. Could you fail? Yes. So could anyone. But I don't think you will, and I'm willing to bet the resources of a major project on that belief. Is there an agenda? Only if you count wanting to see the company actually live up to its stated values as an agenda. I can't control what other people think or say, but I can control who gets opportunities, and you earned yours. Jordan read the message twice, then a third time. It was the kind of candor he hadn't expected from a CEO, the kind of vulnerability that felt like trust being offered. Thank you for the honesty, he typed, and for driving today. Ava really liked you. She doesn't warm up to people easily anymore, not since her mom died. But she liked you. Another pause, shorter this time. She's wonderful. You're raising her well. They texted back and forth for another hour, the conversation drifting from work to parenthood to Oakland to books they'd both read. It was easy in a way Jordan hadn't experienced in years, the kind of conversation that made you forget to check the time. When they finally said goodnight, Jordan sat on his balcony for a while longer, processing the strangeness of the day. He'd started the morning as an employee trying to prove himself. He'd ended it having a deeply personal conversation with his CEO while his daughter slept peacefully in the next room. The boundaries of his life were shifting in ways he didn't fully understand, opening doors he hadn't known existed. It should have worried him more than it did. The next morning, Jordan arrived at work to find a package on his desk. Inside was a children's book about photosynthesis, advanced but written in an accessible way, with beautiful illustrations. The note attached said simply, "For Ava's science project." Jordan held the book, feeling its weight, understanding the gesture for what it was. Not just a gift, but an acknowledgement. A bridge being built between the compartmentalized worlds of his life. He pulled out his phone and took a photo of the book, sent it to Evelyn with the caption, "She's going to love this. Thank you." The response came during his lunch break. "There's a botanical garden in Berkeley that does educational programs for kids. If you think she'd enjoy it, I'd be happy to connect you with someone there." Jordan stared at the message, at the careful offering of help that didn't presume or overstep, but simply opened another door. He thought about Ava's face when she saw new plants, her endless questions, her hunger to understand how the world worked. "She would love that," he typed back. "Really, consider it done." That afternoon, Jordan's team meeting ran long, diving deep into implementation challenges that required creative problem solving. He was explaining a potential workaround to a data integration issue when he noticed Beth watching him with an expression that was equal parts amused and impressed. "What?" he asked during a break. "Nothing," Beth said, but she was smiling. "It's just nice to work for someone who actually gets excited about solving problems instead of just delegating them. We weren't sure about you at first. You know how it is with management changes. But you're good at this, Jordan. Really good." The validation settled warm in his chest. "Thanks. That means a lot, especially from you." "Don't let it go to your head," Beth said, but her tone was kind. "You've still got to prove this project works, but I think we might actually pull it off." That evening, Jordan picked up Ava from school himself. No miscommunications, no panic. She bounced into his arms with her usual energy, chattering about a butterfly they'd seen at recess. As they walked to the bus stop, she suddenly looked up at him. "Is Ms. Stratton your friend now?" The question caught Jordan off guard. "She's my boss, baby girl. Why do you ask?" "Because she was nice yesterday, and you smiled at your phone a lot last night. You don't usually smile at your phone." Ava's observation was matter of fact, without judgment. "I think she's nice. Can we see her again?" Jordan felt something tighten in his chest, a mix of protectiveness and something more complicated. "Maybe. She's very busy with her work." "But she has time for books and gardens," Ava said with 7-year-old logic that cut through adult rationalizations. "That means she's not too busy for important things." That night, after dinner and homework and all the rituals of their routine, Jordan sat on his balcony again. The beer was the same cheap brand he could barely afford. The view was the same mix of buildings and lights. But something felt different. The weight he'd been carrying, the constant pressure of barely keeping ahead of disaster, felt fractionally lighter. His phone buzzed. Another text from Evelyn. Got you set up with the education coordinator at the botanical garden. Her name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I told her about Ava's science project, and she's excited to help. No pressure, only if it works with your schedule. Jordan looked at the message, at the care embedded in every word. He thought about the book on his desk, about the drive to the school, about the conversation that had stretched late into the night, about the way Evelyn had looked at Ava with something beyond professional courtesy, something almost tender. Why are you doing this? He typed, then deleted it. Too direct? Too vulnerable. This is incredibly kind, he tried instead, but you don't have to delete. Too dismissive of her gesture. Finally, he settled on, Ava and I would love that. Thank you for seeing her. Not just helping, really seeing her. The response came quickly. She's easy to see. She's remarkable, Jordan. And so are you, even if you don't believe it yet. Jordan sat with that message for a long time, reading it over and over, trying to decode what it meant. Professional encouragement? Personal interest? Something else entirely that he was afraid to name? He didn't know. But for the first time since Sarah died, Jordan felt something beyond survival mode. He felt possibility. The sense that doors were opening not through luck or accident, but because someone was choosing to open them, was choosing to see him and his daughter as more than statistics or problems or diversity metrics. It was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Inside the apartment, Ava called out from her room. Daddy, can you come here? Jordan pocketed his phone and went to her. She was sitting up in bed, holding the photosynthesis book that he'd brought home and shown her, her eyes wide with wonder. This is the best book ever, she declared. Look at these pictures. And Miss Stratton got this for me? She did. She thought it would help with your project. She's really nice, Ava said decisively. I like her. Do you like her? The question hung in the air, loaded with meanings Ava couldn't possibly understand, but somehow sensed anyway. Jordan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. I think she's a good person who's trying to help us. And yes, I like her. Good. Ava snuggled back down under her covers, still holding the book. Because I think she likes us too. And we don't have a lot of people who like us, Daddy. Just Uncle Calvin and Mrs. Martinez downstairs, and now Miss Stratton. That's not very many. The observation landed with painful accuracy. Their world had gotten very small after Sarah died, contracted to just the two of them and a handful of people who'd proven themselves trustworthy. Jordan had convinced himself that was enough, that needing more was weakness. But maybe Ava was right. Maybe 3 people wasn't enough. Maybe letting someone else in, someone who seemed to genuinely see them and care, wasn't dangerous. Maybe it was exactly what they needed. You're pretty wise for 7, Jordan said softly, kissing her forehead. I know, Ava said with the absolute confidence of childhood. Now, can you read me one more story from the book? The part about how plants know where the sun is? Jordan read until Ava fell asleep mid-sentence, her breathing evening out into the peaceful rhythm of childhood dreams. He turned off her lamp and stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep, feeling the fierce protective love that had defined every decision he'd made since the day she was born. Whatever was happening with Evelyn Stratton, whatever doors were opening, whatever connection was forming, Jordan knew he had to be careful, had to protect Ava from disappointment, from people who might care today and vanish tomorrow. But he also knew, with growing certainty, that this wasn't temporary, that something real was being built here, brick by careful brick. He just didn't know yet that in 2 days everything would shift again, that a simple invitation to the botanical garden would become something more, that the careful professional distance he and Evelyn had been maintaining would dissolve under the late afternoon sun while Ava ran ahead on garden paths, laughing with pure joy. Jordan didn't know that he was standing at another threshold, about to walk through another wrong door that would turn out to be exactly right, but he was about to find out. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of California sunshine that made everything feel possible. Jordan had barely slept, his mind cycling through a dozen reasons why accepting Evelyn's invitation to the botanical garden was a terrible idea, followed by Ava's excitement overriding every single one of them. His daughter had been awake since 6, changing outfits 3 times, packing and repacking her small backpack with the photosynthesis book, a notebook for observations, and her favorite purple pen. "What if we see pitcher plants?" Ava asked for the fifth time, bouncing on her toes while Jordan tried to tie her shoes. "Dr. Chen said they might have pitcher plants in the carnivorous section, and those eat bugs, Daddy. Plants that eat bugs." "Then we'll take lots of notes," Jordan said, finally getting the laces tied in a bow that would last maybe an hour. "And remember, Miss Stratton is being very kind to take us. We use our best manners, okay?" "I always use my best manners," Ava said with 7-year-old indignation, then immediately contradicted herself by wiping her nose on her sleeve. Jordan caught her hand gently. "Tissue, baby girl. Come on." They took the bus to the BART station, then the train across the bay to Berkeley. Ava pressed her face against the window the whole way, narrating everything she saw: the water, the boats, the San Francisco skyline growing smaller behind them. Jordan watched her and felt the familiar ache of wanting to give her everything, of knowing this simple trip to a garden was a luxury they normally couldn't afford, but was being gifted by someone who'd somehow seen past all his defenses. Evelyn was waiting at the Berkeley station, leaning against her Audi in jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her look younger, more approachable than her usual executive armor. When she spotted them, her face lit up with a smile that transformed her from his boss into just a woman who was genuinely happy to see them. "There's my favorite scientist," Evelyn said, crouching down as Ava ran over. "Are you ready to see some amazing plants?" "So ready!" Ava practically vibrated with excitement. "Did you know some plants can eat bugs? And some plants can turn toward the sun even when they're inside. And some plants—" "Ava," Jordan interrupted gently, catching up, "let Ms. Stratton breathe." "It's fine," Evelyn said, straightening up, her eyes meeting Jordan's with warmth that made his stomach flip. "I love the enthusiasm. And please, Ava, you can call me Evelyn. Ms. Stratton makes me feel like I'm about to fire someone." Ava giggled at that, already comfortable in a way that made Jordan both grateful and nervous. They climbed into the car, Ava insisting on the middle of the back seat so she could see everything, and drove toward the Berkeley Hills where the botanical garden sprawled across acres of carefully cultivated ecosystems. The garden was stunning, even Jordan had to admit. Winding paths led through sections representing different climates and regions: California natives, Asian collections, desert plants that looked alien and beautiful. Dr. Chen met them at the entrance, a warm woman in her 60s with dirt under her fingernails, and an infectious passion for botany that matched Ava's curiosity note for note. "So you're interested in phototropism," Dr. Chen said, walking alongside Ava as they entered the garden. "That's wonderful. Let me show you some of my favorite examples." Jordan and Evelyn followed a few paces behind his doctor. Chen led Ava deeper into the garden, pointing out plants that demonstrated various light-seeking behaviors, explaining auxins and cell elongation in terms a 7-year-old could grasp. Ava hung on every word, asking questions that showed she'd actually read the book Evelyn had given her. "She's incredible," Evelyn said quietly, watching Ava crouch down to examine a plant up close. "The way her mind works, she's going to do amazing things." "If I can keep up with her," Jordan said, unable to keep the worry from his voice. "Some days I feel like I'm barely treading water, and she's already swimming laps around me." "That's what good parents feel like," Evelyn said. "The ones who are actually paying attention." She paused, then added, "My mother used to say that children are designed to surpass their parents. If they're not leaving you behind, you're holding them back." Jordan glanced at her, hearing something beneath the words. "Your mother sounds wise." She was. Evelyn's expression shifted, became more guarded. "She died when I was 16. Cancer. My father threw himself into building the company. It was his way of grieving. I threw myself into making sure he'd be proud of me. We both coped by working." "I'm sorry," Jordan said, and meant it. "That's too young to lose a parent." "So is 7, Evelyn said softly, her eyes still on Ava. "At least I got 16 years. Ava barely got 6 with her mother, from what I gather." Jordan felt his throat tighten. They'd never explicitly discussed Sarah, though he knew Evelyn must have pieced together the basic facts from his personnel file. 5.5, actually. She got sick fast. Aggressive leukemia. One day we were planning Ava's 6th birthday party. 3 months later, I was planning a funeral. God, Jordan, I didn't mean to. It's okay. He surprised himself by meaning it. It's part of our story, part of who Ava is. This fierce little person who understands loss but refuses to let it define her. She's better at that than I am. They walked in silence for a moment, following the path as Dr. Chen and Ava moved ahead toward a greenhouse. The Berkeley hills rose green and golden around them. The air smelled of eucalyptus and earth, and Jordan felt something in his chest loosen slightly. "Can I tell you something?" Evelyn said suddenly. "And you can tell me if this is completely inappropriate, and I'll never mention it again." "Okay," Jordan said cautiously. "That day you walked into the wrong room." Evelyn stopped walking, turned to face him fully. "For about 30 seconds I was angry. Not at you specifically, but at the situation, at the violation of privacy, at knowing that even though it was clearly an accident, it would become a whole thing." She took a breath. "And then you looked at me with this expression of absolute terror, and I realized you weren't scared of getting fired. You were scared of what the narrative would become. What people would assume about you because of your skin color and my gender and 400 years of ugly history." Jordan felt stripped bare by her observation. "You saw all that in 3 seconds?" "I saw enough." Evelyn's voice was quiet but firm. "And it made me realize how many layers of fear and calculation you must navigate every single day just to exist in spaces I take for granted. So when I found your proposal later that night, when I read it and saw the brilliance in it, I thought, here's someone who's been swimming with weights attached while everyone else judges him for not going fast enough." "So you gave me the position out of pity," Jordan said, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "No?" Evelyn stepped closer, her intensity almost physical. "I gave you the position because you earned it, and because I was tired of watching the system work exactly as it's designed to, keeping talented people small while mediocrity rises. Pity would have been letting you keep your analyst job and feeling good about myself for not firing you. This was recognition." Jordan stared at her, this woman who'd somehow become central to his life in the space of a few weeks, who said things that made him want to believe the world could be different. "Why do you care? Really? You could just run your company, collect your paycheck, not worry about any of this." "Because I've spent my whole life in rooms where everyone looks and thinks the same way," Evelyn said. "And I've watched those rooms make terrible decisions because no one was willing to question the consensus. Change doesn't happen because people in power suddenly become enlightened. It happens because they get uncomfortable enough to act." She smiled slightly. "You make me uncomfortable, Jordan Miles. In the best possible way." Before Jordan could respond, Ava's voice rang out from up the path. "Daddy! Evelyn! Come see! There's a whole room of plants that eat meat!" The moment broke. Evelyn's professional composure slid back into place, though something remained different in her eyes. They walked together toward the greenhouse where Ava waited, practically vibrating with excitement at the entrance. The carnivorous plant section was indeed impressive. Pitcher plants with their elegant death traps, Venus flytraps demonstrating their mechanical precision, sundews sparkling with sticky droplets that looked like dew but were actually digestive enzymes. Dr. Chen explained the evolution of carnivory, how nutrient-poor environments had driven these plants to seek alternative food sources, how adaptation was the key to survival. Jordan watched Ava absorb it all, her notebook filling with observations and sketches. He glanced at Evelyn and found her watching him rather than the plants. An expression on her face he couldn't quite read. When she noticed him looking, she smiled and mouthed, "She's amazing." He mouthed back, "I know," and felt something shift between them, some acknowledgement passing that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with two people recognizing something real in each other. They spent 3 hours in the garden. Dr. Chen gave Ava a packet of seeds to start her own phototropism experiments and promised to answer any questions that came up during her project. Ava hugged the older woman fiercely, then immediately started planning her experiment aloud as they walked back to the car. "I'll plant some seeds on the windowsill and some in the middle of the room and track which way they grow and how fast and whether the ones closer to the window grow faster or just bend more. And..." She paused for breath. "Can we get a bigger windowsill?" "Let's work with what we have," Jordan said diplomatically, which Ava recognized as parent speak for no, but was too excited to argue. Lunch was at a small cafe near campus that Evelyn knew, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and food that tasted homemade. Ava ordered grilled cheese and fruit salad, then proceeded to tell Evelyn everything she'd learned, barely stopping to breathe between bites. Jordan tried to moderate her enthusiasm, but Evelyn waved him off. "Let her talk. I'm learning things," Evelyn said, and seemed to genuinely mean it. She asked thoughtful questions, engaged with Ava's half-formed theories, treated her like a person whose ideas mattered. Jordan watched the two of them and felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope that this could be more than temporary, that maybe they were building toward something that could last. After lunch, Ava crashed hard, the morning's excitement catching up with her. She fell asleep in the back seat within minutes of leaving the restaurant, her head tilted at an angle that would definitely cause neck pain later. Jordan twisted around to check on her, then settled back with a sigh. "She's out," he said quietly. "Thank you for today. Seriously, this was..." He struggled to find words adequate to the feeling. "This was one of the best days we've had in a long time." "It was one of my best days too," Evelyn said, surprising him with her honesty. "I can't remember the last time I did something like this. Something that wasn't work or obligation or maintaining appearances." She kept her eyes on the road, but her voice carried weight. "My life is very structured, Jordan. Very controlled. Everything serves a purpose. Every relationship has clear boundaries. And then you open that door, literally, and suddenly nothing fits in its proper box anymore." Jordan's heart kicked up a notch. "Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know yet." Evelyn glanced at him, quick but meaningful. "But I don't think so." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the East Bay hills rolling past the windows, Ava's soft breathing from the back seat. Jordan felt suspended in the moment, aware that something significant was happening, but unable to name it exactly. Finally, Evelyn spoke again. "Can I ask you something personal? And you can tell me it's none of my business." "After everything you've shared today, I think we're past formal boundaries," Jordan said. "What was Sarah like?" The question should have hurt, but somehow it didn't. Jordan thought about his wife, about the woman who'd made him want to be better, who'd believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. "She was light," he said finally. "Everything about her was bright, her laugh, her energy, the way she saw possibilities where I only saw problems. She made me believe I could be more than my circumstances. And she loved Ava with this fierce, uncomplicated joy that I'm still trying to live up to." "You're doing it," Evelyn said softly. "Living up to it. That little girl back there is happy and curious and confident because of you." "Because of both of us," Jordan corrected. "I'm just trying to honor what Sarah started. She'd be proud of you, of how you're raising Ava, of how you're building your career, of how you haven't let the world make you small or bitter." Jordan felt his eyes sting and blinked hard against it. "Some days I feel plenty bitter." "But you don't let Ava see it. That takes strength." They crossed back over the bay as the afternoon light turned golden, San Francisco rising up ahead of them like a promise or a mirage. Jordan directed Evelyn to his neighborhood, feeling suddenly self-conscious about the contrast between his modest building and the world she inhabited. But if Evelyn noticed or cared, she didn't show it. She parked in front of his building and turned off the engine. In the back seat, Ava stirred but didn't wake. Jordan knew he should gather his daughter and go inside, should thank Evelyn again and maintain the professional distance that had already eroded beyond recognition. Instead, he found himself saying, "Do you want to come up for coffee or water or... I don't know what I have actually, but you're welcome to find out." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, and Jordan saw her weighing the invitation, considering all the implications. Then she smiled. "I'd like that." They carried sleeping Ava up the 3 flights of stairs, Jordan supporting most of her weight, while Evelyn hovered protectively behind them. Inside the apartment, Jordan laid his daughter on the couch and covered her with the Afghan Mrs. Martinez had crocheted last Christmas. Ava mumbled something unintelligible and burrowed deeper into sleep. Jordan turned to find Evelyn studying his living room with open curiosity. He tried to see it through her eyes, the secondhand furniture, Ava's drawings covering every wall, library books stacked on every surface, the general organized chaos of a single parent's life. It was clean but cluttered, cramped but full of love. nothing like the sleek spaces he imagined Evelyn inhabited. "This is home," he said, unable to keep the defensive note from his voice. "It's wonderful," Evelyn said, and sounded like she meant it. She moved closer to one of Ava's drawings, a family portrait with stick figures that were somehow still full of personality. She put Sarah in this one. Jordan came to stand beside her, looking at the drawing he'd seen 100 times. She still does that sometimes, draws us as 3 instead of 2. Her therapist says it's healthy, keeping her mother present while still processing the loss. Ava sees a therapist? Once a month. We started right after Sarah died. Jordan moved toward the kitchen, needing something to do with his hands. I wasn't sure if it was helping at first, but Dr. Wong is good, patient. She doesn't push Ava to feel anything she's not ready to feel. That must be expensive, Evelyn said quietly, following him into the small kitchen. Jordan's hand stilled on the coffee grounds. It is, but it's not negotiable. Ava's mental health comes before everything else. Rent, food, my pride, everything. I wasn't judging, Evelyn said quickly. I was admiring the commitment to do whatever it takes for her. Jordan finished making the coffee in silence, hyper-aware of Evelyn's presence in his small kitchen, of how her expensive sweater and designer jeans looked out of place among his thrift store dishes and worn countertops. He poured 2 mugs and handed her one, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "There's a balcony," he said. "It's not much, but there's a view, sort of." The balcony was barely big enough for 2 chairs, but Jordan kept it clean and had managed to grow a few herbs in containers that Ava liked to water. The view was exactly as he'd described, a sort of panorama of Oakland rooftops and palm trees, and the distant shimmer of the bay if you knew where to look. They sat in the mismatched chairs, one from his old apartment with Sarah, one picked up off someone's curb, and sipped coffee in comfortable silence. The sun was starting its descent, painting everything in warm amber tones. "I need to tell you something," Evelyn said finally, "and I need you to hear me out before you respond, because this is hard for me to say." Jordan's stomach clenched. This was it. The moment where she'd explain why today had to be the end of whatever was forming between them, why professional boundaries mattered, why they came from different worlds that shouldn't intersect. "Okay. I like you," Evelyn said simply. "Not as an employee, not as a project. I like you, Jordan. I like talking to you, and I like watching you be a father, and I like the way you challenge my assumptions without being cruel about it. And I like Ava, genuinely like her, not in some abstract children are nice way, but as a specific, fascinating person I want to know better." She took a breath. "And I don't know what to do with any of that because it's complicated and probably inappropriate and definitely outside anything I plan for my life." Jordan stared at her, his heart hammering. "You're saying..." "I'm saying I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first day," Evelyn interrupted. "And not because of the awkwardness of the situation, but because I saw something in you, in how you handled it, in your work, in your integrity. And then I met Ava, and it just..." She gestured helplessly. "I don't know. Something clicked into place." "I like you too," Jordan heard himself say, the words escaping before he could calculate their impact. "I've been trying not to because it seems impossible and dangerous and like the kind of thing that could blow up my life. But I do. I like you." "What do we do about it?" Evelyn asked. Jordan wanted to say they should ignore it, walk away, maintain their respective positions in their carefully ordered worlds. But he was tired of playing it safe, tired of letting fear make his decisions. Sarah had taught him that life was too short for anything else. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know that today felt right in a way nothing has felt right since Sarah died. And I know Ava lit up around you in a way she hasn't with anyone except family. And I know..." He paused, gathering courage. "I know that the way you look at me makes me want to be brave enough to believe good things can happen. Not just to other people. To me. To us." "It's complicated," Evelyn said, but she was leaning forward, her eyes intent on his face. "Everything about my life is complicated," Jordan countered. "My daughter, my job, my finances, the color of my skin in corporate America. One more complication isn't going to break me. But pretending this doesn't exist might." Evelyn set down her coffee mug with careful precision. "I don't know how to do this. I've spent my whole adult life building walls between professional and personal, keeping everything compartmentalized and controlled. You're asking me to tear that down. I'm not asking for anything, Jordan said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm just telling you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. They sat there as the sun continued its descent, the light shifting from gold to rose. From inside, Jordan heard Ava stirring, her sleepy voice calling for him. The moment broke, reality reasserting itself in the form of his daughter's needs. Jordan started to stand. Evelyn caught his hand, stopped him. This isn't over. This conversation, whatever this is, I need time to think, but it's not over. Okay, Jordan said, the simple word carrying the weight of possibility. He went inside to Ava, who was disoriented from her nap and clingy in the way she got when she woke up in unfamiliar circumstances. Even though they were home, something about falling asleep in the car had confused her internal clock. Jordan scooped her up, and she wrapped herself around him like a koala. Is Evelyn still here? Ava mumbled against his shoulder. She's on the balcony. Do you want to say goodbye? Ava nodded, and Jordan carried her out to where Evelyn still sat, her expression thoughtful. When she saw them, something softened in her face. Hey, sleepyhead, Evelyn said. Did you have a good nap? Mm-hmm. Ava reached out one arm toward Evelyn, a gesture of trust that made Jordan's chest tight. Will you come back? I want to show you my experiments when they start growing. Evelyn looked at Jordan, a question in her eyes. He gave the slightest nod. Your choice. I'd love that, Evelyn said to Ava. You can send me pictures too if your dad doesn't mind. He won't mind, Ava said with absolute confidence. Daddy likes you. I can tell. Both adults froze, caught by 7-year-old observation. Then Evelyn laughed, genuine and warm. Well, I like him too, and you're both pretty special. I know, Ava said, and somehow made it sound both adorable and perfectly reasonable. Evelyn left shortly after, but not before exchanging a long look with Jordan that promised continued conversation. After she was gone, Jordan made dinner with Ava helping, which mostly meant narrating her entire day at the garden while occasionally stirring something. They ate on the balcony because Ava declared it was too nice to be inside, and watched the Oakland skyline light up as darkness fell. Today was the best day, Ava announced between bites of pasta. Can we do that every weekend? Probably not every weekend, Jordan said, tempering expectations gently, but maybe sometimes. Because Evelyn is busy? Because everyone's busy, baby girl, but we'll make time for the important things. Is Evelyn an important thing? Ava asked, her 7-year-old directness cutting through every adult complication. Jordan considered how to answer, how to be honest without making promises he couldn't keep. I think she might be, he said finally, but we'll have to see. People are complicated. She's not complicated, Ava said with certainty. She's nice and she likes plants and she likes us. That's not complicated. You might be right, Jordan said, pulling his daughter close. You might be exactly right. That night, after Ava was in bed, Jordan's phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. I had a great time today. Ava is everything you said and more. Thank you for letting me into your Saturday. Jordan typed back, Thank you for making it special, for both of us. There was a pause, then, Can we talk this week? Really talk. I need to sort through what I'm feeling, but I don't want to do that in isolation. Monday lunch? Jordan suggested, his heart racing. There's a place near the office that's quiet. It's a date, Evelyn replied, then quickly added, I mean, not a date, a meeting. To talk. God, I'm bad at this. Jordan found himself smiling at his phone, at her flustered honesty. It's a date, not a date. I'll take it. He went to bed that night feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years, anticipation instead of dread for what tomorrow might bring. Beside his bed, Ava's drawing of their family caught the streetlight through the window, Sarah's stick figure smiling, as if giving her blessing to whatever came next. Jordan closed his eyes and let himself hope. Monday arrived with the weight of decisions unmade and futures unwritten. Jordan woke early, his mind already racing through the conversation ahead, trying to anticipate every direction it might go. He made Ava's breakfast on autopilot, braided her hair with practiced efficiency, and walked her to school while she chattered about seed germination rates and whether phototropism worked in space. "Do astronauts have plants on the space station?" Ava asked as they reached the school gates. "Because if they do, which way would the plants grow if there's no up or down?" "That's a really good question," Jordan said, kissing her forehead. "Maybe we can research it tonight." "Or you could ask Evelyn," Ava suggested with the casual manipulation of children everywhere. "She probably knows stuff about space plants." Jordan couldn't help but smile. "I'll see what I can do. Have a good day, baby girl." At the office, Jordan threw himself into work with intensity that his team noticed but didn't question. He refined projections, reviewed implementation timelines, prepared for meetings that wouldn't happen until next week. Anything to keep his mind from fixating on 12:30 when he'd meet Evelyn at the small Vietnamese restaurant 3 blocks from Stratton Dynamics. Beth caught him staring at his computer screen without actually seeing it around 11. "You okay, boss? You've been on that same spreadsheet for 20 minutes without changing anything." Jordan blinked, refocusing. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking through some logistics." "Personal logistics or work logistics?" Beth asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been watching corporate politics for 20 years, Beth said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You want some unsolicited advice?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really," Beth smiled. "Whatever's happening between you and Stratton, and don't bother denying it. I've seen the way she looks at you in meetings. Just be careful. Not because I think it's wrong, but because this building is full of people looking for reasons to tear down anyone who's rising too fast." Jordan felt his defenses rise. "Nothing's happening. We're just—" "Jordan." Beth's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm on your side. I'm just saying that if something is developing, be smart about it. Document everything work-related. Keep professional boundaries clear in public, and don't give anyone ammunition." She stood, heading for the door. "And for what it's worth, I like her. I think she's genuine, but that doesn't mean everyone else will see it that way." After Beth left, Jordan sat with her words, feeling the truth in them. He and Evelyn were walking a razor's edge, and one wrong step could destroy everything they'd both worked for. But the alternative, pretending Saturday hadn't happened, that they didn't feel what they clearly felt, seemed impossible. At 12:15, Jordan left his office and walked the 3 blocks through Oakland's downtown. The restaurant was small and family-owned, the kind of place where the pho was perfect and nobody from Stratton ever went. Evelyn was already there, sitting in a back booth, dressed in a simple black dress that somehow made her look more approachable than her usual power suits. "Hi," she said as he slid into the seat across from her, and the single syllable carried the weight of everything unsaid since Saturday. "Hi," Jordan replied, and for a moment they just looked at each other, acknowledging the significance of this moment. The server came, took their orders, disappeared. Jordan waited for Evelyn to speak first, knowing she'd asked for this conversation, that she needed to process whatever she'd been thinking for the past 36 hours. "I talked to my therapist yesterday," Evelyn said finally, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. "Emergency Sunday session. She probably thought I was having a breakdown." "Were you?" "Sort of." Evelyn's smile was self-deprecating. "I told her about you, about Ava, about how I can't stop thinking about Saturday and how terrified that makes me. Want to know what she said?" Jordan nodded, not trusting his voice. "She asked me when was the last time I did something just because it felt right, not because it served a strategic purpose or fulfilled an obligation or maintained an image." Evelyn's eyes met his. "And I couldn't remember, Jordan. I literally could not remember the last time I made a choice based purely on what I wanted rather than what I should want." "What do you want?" Jordan asked quietly. "I want more Saturdays," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the vulnerability in her words. "I want to see Ava's face when her seeds sprout. I want to hear about your day and tell you about mine without filtering everything through corporate speak. I want to sit on your balcony and drink terrible coffee and feel like a real person instead of a position on an org chart." Jordan's heart was racing. "That sounds like dating." "It does, doesn't it?" Evelyn laughed, but it was nervous. "Which is terrifying for about 50 reasons, starting with the power dynamic and ending with the fact that I haven't been on an actual date in 3 years." "Try 5, Jordan said. And that's including the year before Sarah died when we were too exhausted from parenting to do anything but fall asleep watching Netflix. Their food arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity. They ate in silence for a few minutes, but it was comfortable rather than awkward, the shared meal feeling significant in its ordinariness. "I need you to understand something," Jordan said, setting down his chopsticks. "If we do this, whatever this is, I can't be your project. I can't be the thing you do to feel good about yourself or to prove you're not like other executives. I need to know this is real for you, not some experiment in breaking your own rules." "It's real," Evelyn said immediately. "God, Jordan, it's so real it's keeping me up at night. I've been trying to talk myself out of it for days, listing all the logical reasons why this is a terrible idea, why we should maintain professional distance, why I should just promote you again and send you off to some other division where we never have to see each other." She leaned forward. "But I can't. Because when I think about not seeing you, about not being part of Ava's life, about going back to my carefully controlled existence, it feels like suffocating." Jordan absorbed this, the raw honesty of it. "People are going to talk. They already are." "Let them talk," Evelyn said with surprising fierceness. "I've spent my entire career managing other people's perceptions, making sure every decision was defensible, every action beyond reproach. I'm tired, Jordan. I'm tired of being perfect and lonely and proving I deserve a position I earned 10 times over." She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. "I'm not saying it won't be complicated, but I'm saying I want to try. If you do." Jordan looked at her hand, so close to his, separated by inches and the weight of professional consequences. Then he closed the distance, his fingers interlacing with hers. "I want to try," he said. "But we need rules, boundaries at work, complete transparency about the project so no one can claim favoritism. And we need to go slow for Ava's sake. She's already attached to you, and if this doesn't work out, it'll break her heart," Evelyn finished. "I know. We'll be careful. We'll be smart. And we'll put her first, always." They sat there holding hands across the table, two people who'd found each other through the wrong door at exactly the right time. The restaurant hummed with lunch conversation around them, but Jordan felt suspended in this moment, this choice that would change everything. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we finish lunch, go back to work, and act completely professional," Evelyn said, though she didn't let go of his hand. "And then tonight, if you and Ava want, you could come to my place for dinner. Nothing fancy. I'll order pizza. Ava can explore, and we can talk more. As people, not as CEO and project lead." "She'd love that," Jordan said. "Fair warning, though. She's going to want to see every plant you own and ask approximately 800 questions." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Evelyn said, and the warmth in her voice made something settle in Jordan's chest, something that felt dangerously like peace. They finished lunch, split the check despite Evelyn's protests, and walked back toward Stratton Dynamics together, but not too close, maintaining the professional distance that would protect them both. At the building's entrance, Evelyn paused. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest, for taking this seriously, for not running away." "Thank you for seeing me," Jordan replied. "Really seeing me. That's rare." The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and emails and attempted focus that came and went in waves. Jordan found himself smiling at random moments, then catching himself and forcing his expression back to neutral professional mode. Around 3, he texted Ava's aftercare program to let them know he'd pick her up at 5, then sent a message to Evelyn. "Pizza with pineapple, or are we going traditional?" Her response came quickly. "Pineapple is divisive. Let's get both and let Ava be the tiebreaker." Diplomatic. Very CEO of you. I have my moments. That evening, Jordan picked up Ava and told her about the dinner invitation during their bus ride home. Her reaction was immediate and emphatic. "Really? We're going to Evelyn's house? Does she have a big house? Will there be plants? Can I bring my notebook?" The questions tumbled out rapid fire, her excitement palpable. "Yes, probably. Definitely yes, and yes," Jordan answered, ticking off responses on his fingers. "But remember, best manners I know," Ava interrupted. "Can I change into my space dress, the one with the planets?" "Quick change when we get home, then we need to leave," Jordan said. "And Ava? This is important. Evelyn is someone very special, and we're getting to know her better, but we need to take our time, okay? Not rush into anything. Ava studied him with those two wise eyes. You like her a lot, don't you? Like how you liked Mommy. The observation stopped Jordan cold. It's different, baby girl. Nobody will ever be exactly like Mommy was. I know, Ava said simply. But that's okay. Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me before she got too sick. She said if anything happened to her, I had to make sure you didn't stay sad forever. Jordan felt his throat close up. He pulled Ava close on the bus seat, not caring who saw. When did she tell you that? The last time I saw her, in the hospital, when you went to talk to the doctors. Ava's voice was matter-of-fact, but her grip on Jordan's hand was tight. She said loving people is the most important thing, and it's okay to love new people even when you miss the old ones. She was right, Jordan managed. She was always right about the important stuff.
Bam, det s'agit.
Sita. At home, Jordan changed into clean jeans and a button-down shirt that Ava declared made him look fancy but not too fancy, while she put on her planet dress and insisted on bringing both her observation notebook and a drawing she'd made for Evelyn, a picture of the three of them at the botanical garden, surrounded by enormous flowers. Evelyn's address led them to a converted warehouse in Jack London Square, all exposed brick and massive windows. The building had a doorman who smiled at Ava and sent them up to the top floor. Jordan felt his daughter's hand tighten in his as the elevator rose, whether from excitement or nervousness, he couldn't tell. The elevator opened directly into Evelyn's loft, and Jordan heard Ava's sharp intake of breath. The space was beautiful but lived in, nothing like the sterile showplace he'd half expected. Books everywhere, plants on every surface, comfortable furniture that looked like it had been chosen for actual sitting rather than aesthetics. And one entire wall was floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Oakland estuary, the water reflecting the sunset in shades of pink and gold. Wow, Ava breathed, and Evelyn appeared from the kitchen area, smiling. Hey, you two, welcome. She was dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, looking nothing like the CEO, and everything like just Evelyn. Ava, I heard you might be interested in seeing my plant collection. Yes, please. Ava's shyness vanished, replaced by scientific curiosity. Do you have any that demonstrate phototropism? Because my seeds haven't sprouted yet, but I want to compare. Come on, I'll show you, Evelyn interrupted gently, holding out her hand. Ava took it without hesitation, and Jordan watched them walk toward the window wall where Evelyn had cultivated an impressive array of plants. Their voices faded into plant talk as Jordan stood in the entrance, feeling the enormity of this moment, his daughter and this woman he was falling for, connecting over leaves and light, building something that felt like the beginning of a family. You coming? Evelyn called over her shoulder, and Jordan realized he'd been standing frozen, just watching them. Yeah, he said, moving forward. I'm coming. The next hour passed in easy comfort. Ava took notes on Evelyn's plants, asked permission before touching anything, and explained her experimental design with 7-year-old seriousness. Evelyn listened like Ava was a colleague presenting research, asking clarifying questions, offering suggestions. Jordan mostly watched, occasionally contributing, but mainly just absorbing the reality of these two people who were somehow becoming central to each other's lives. Pizza arrived, both kinds, and they ate sitting on the floor by the windows because Ava declared the view was too good to waste by sitting at a regular table. Jordan found himself laughing more than he had in months at Ava's stories and Evelyn's dry observations and the sheer surreal pleasure of this moment. After dinner, Ava presented her drawing to Evelyn with ceremony. I made this for you. It's us at the garden. I made the flowers really big because that's how they felt, like everything was bigger and more colorful than normal. Evelyn took the drawing with hands that weren't quite steady. This is beautiful, Ava. Thank you. I'm going to put it up right here. She stood and walked to the refrigerator using a magnet to hang the drawing in a place of honor. So I can see it every morning. Really? Ava's face lit up. You're not just being nice? Really, Evelyn said firmly. It's one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. As the evening stretched on, Ava's energy finally began to flag. She curled up on Evelyn's couch with a book about desert plants, fighting sleep, but losing. Jordan sat in the armchair nearby while Evelyn settled on the couch's other end, Ava's feet nearly touching her leg. She's had a big day, Jordan said quietly. They're all big days when you're 7, Evelyn replied, her eyes on Ava's drowsing face. Everything matters so much. Every experience is significant. I worry I'm not giving her enough of them, Jordan admitted. Big days, I mean. Experiences that aren't just survival. Jordan, Evelyn's voice was gentle but intense. You're giving her everything that matters. Stability, love, curiosity, the knowledge that she's valued. Material things are nice, but they're not what builds a person. Speaking from experience? My father gave me every material advantage, Evelyn said, her eyes distant. Private schools, travel, connections. But after my mother died, he forgot to give me himself. He was always working, always building, always proving something to people who would never be satisfied. I had everything except what I actually needed. Someone who saw me as more than an extension of their ambitions. Jordan watched her face, seeing the layers beneath the composed surface. Is that why you did all this? The botanical garden, tonight? Because you know what Ava needs? Maybe, Evelyn said. Or maybe I'm doing it because you both give me something I didn't know I was missing. A reason to leave the office at reasonable hours. A reminder that there's life outside of quarterly reports and board meetings. Permission to just be a person. She looked at him directly. You're not the only one building something here, Jordan. I'm building too. Ava stirred, mumbled something about roots and sunlight, and settled deeper into sleep. Jordan stood and carefully lifted her, his back protesting slightly. She was getting bigger, heavier, growing up in ways that thrilled and terrified him. I should get her home, he said quietly. School tomorrow. Of course. Evelyn stood too, hovering close in that way people do when they're not sure if touching is allowed. Would it be okay if I helped? Called you a car? She looks heavy. She is, Jordan admitted. And yes, a car would be great. Thank you. Evelyn pulled out her phone, ordered a car that arrived in minutes. She rode down in the elevator with them, helped settle Ava into the back seat, then stood on the sidewalk as Jordan climbed in beside his sleeping daughter. Same time next week? Evelyn asked, leaning into the open door. Maybe I'll actually cook something instead of ordering in. You don't have to. I want to, Evelyn interrupted. I want to be part of this, of your lives, if you'll let me. Jordan looked at her standing there in the California evening, backlit by the streetlights, her expression open and hopeful and maybe a little scared. He thought about Sarah's message to Ava, about loving people being the most important thing. He thought about doors opening and the courage it took to walk through them. We'd like that, he said. Both of us. Evelyn's smile could have lit the entire block. Good. Now get this girl home before she wakes up completely disoriented. The next weeks unfolded with a rhythm that felt both natural and miraculous. Dinners at Evelyn's became a weekly tradition, sometimes with Ava, sometimes just the two of them after Ava was in bed, talking late into the night about everything and nothing. At work, they maintained professional boundaries that felt less like barriers and more like courtesy, acknowledging the space they inhabited together without making their colleagues uncomfortable. Jordan's project was succeeding beyond projections. The pilot program revealed inefficiencies that, when corrected, saved Stratton Dynamics millions. His team was energized, the COO was impressed, and word spread through the company that Jordan Miles was the real deal. Not a diversity hire, not getting by on favoritism, but genuinely excellent at his job. The whispers hadn't stopped entirely. Jordan still caught sidelong glances, still overheard comments that stopped when he entered a room. But Beth's advice had been sound. He documented everything, kept his work beyond reproach, and let his results speak louder than rumors. And Evelyn was there, not fixing his problems, but standing beside him as he navigated them. In meetings, she treated him exactly as she treated every other project lead, demanding, supportive, expecting excellence. In private, she was something else entirely, warm and funny, and surprisingly silly in ways that made Ava giggle and Jordan's heart ache with happiness. 3 months after that first dinner, Jordan found himself standing in a real estate office, filling out a rental application for a small house in the Oakland Hills. It had 3 bedrooms, a yard for Ava's experiments, and a mortgage that his new salary, he'd gotten another raise after the project's success, could actually cover. Are you sure about this? Calvin asked, standing beside him as a witness and voice of reason. That's a lot of commitment. I'm sure, Jordan said, signing his name with a steadiness that surprised him. Ava needs space to grow. I need space to breathe. We've been treading water for too long. And Evelyn? Calvin asked carefully. How does she fit into this picture? Jordan paused, considering the question. They hadn't defined what they were yet, hadn't put labels on the dinners and late-night conversations and slowly deepening connection, but he knew what he hoped for, what he was building toward. She fits, Jordan said simply. However this evolves, she fits. The house became available in January, and moving day was a chaotic affair involving Calvin, Mrs. Martinez, 3 guys from Jordan's team who volunteered, and Evelyn, who showed up in jeans and work gloves ready to haul boxes. Ava directed traffic like a tiny general, making sure her room was set up first, her plant experiments carefully transported to the new windowsill. That evening, after everyone else had left, and Ava was exploring her new backyard with a flashlight, Jordan and Evelyn stood in his new kitchen surrounded by unpacked boxes. You know what this needs? Evelyn said, looking around the space. About 3 days of unpacking? That too, she laughed. But I was thinking, a garden. In the backyard, vegetables, herbs, flowers. Something Ava could tend as part of her ongoing plant studies. Jordan felt something warm spread through his chest. You're thinking long-term. I am, Evelyn said, turning to face him fully. Is that okay? Am I moving too fast? No, Jordan said, pulling her close, their first real embrace without the careful distance they'd maintained. You're moving exactly right. They stood there in his new kitchen, holding each other while outside Ava's voice called out discoveries from the backyard, and Jordan thought about all the doors he'd walked through to get here, some wrong, some right, all necessary. That moment 3 months ago when he'd opened the wrong door had felt like the end of everything. Now he understood it had been the beginning. Spring arrived, and with it, Ava's science fair. Her project on phototropism won first place in her grade, her presentation thorough and passionate. Jordan stood in the back of the gymnasium with Evelyn beside him, both of them beaming with pride as Ava accepted her ribbon. She's going to change the world, Evelyn whispered. She already has, Jordan replied. At least she changed mine. That night, after celebrating with ice cream and showing the ribbon to Mrs. Martinez and Calvin, after Ava had finally crashed in her bed surrounded by her awards and plant sketches, Jordan found Evelyn on his back porch. She was sitting on the steps, looking out at the garden they'd started planting together, neat rows of seedlings just beginning to emerge, promising growth and life. Penny for your thoughts, Jordan said, settling beside her. I was thinking about doors, Evelyn said, leaning into his shoulder, about how the wrong ones sometimes lead exactly where you need to go. Funny, Jordan said. I was thinking the same thing. They sat there as the Oakland evening settled around them, city lights twinkling in the distance, the sound of Ava's music box drifting through her open window. Jordan thought about the journey that had brought them here, grief and struggle, fear and hope, the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone see you completely. I love you, he said, the words emerging naturally, without the weight of decision. I think I have for a while, but I needed to be sure. I needed to know this was real, that we were building something that could last. And now I'm sure. Evelyn turned to look at him, her eyes bright with tears she didn't try to hide. I love you too. Both of you. You and Ava. You've given me a family I didn't know I was looking for. So what happens now? Jordan asked, echoing the question from their lunch months ago. Now we keep building, Evelyn said simply. One day at a time, no rushing, no forcing, just letting this become what it's meant to be. Sounds perfect, Jordan said, and kissed her there on the back porch while the garden grew in the darkness, and Ava slept peacefully in her new home. 6 months later, Jordan stood in that same backyard watching Ava show Evelyn her latest experiment, this time involving the vegetables from their garden and her hypothesis about companion planting. The 3 of them had fallen into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Evelyn had essentially moved in, though she kept her loft for nights when she needed solitude or when work demanded early mornings. They'd navigated the questions at Stratton. Jordan had been promoted again, this time to a position that didn't report to Evelyn, eliminating any appearance of impropriety. People still talked, but the talk had shifted from scandal to grudging respect. "Daddy," Ava called from the garden, "come see. The tomatoes are growing exactly like Evelyn said they would." Jordan walked over, wrapped his arms around both of them, and felt complete in a way he'd thought impossible after Sarah died. His daughter was thriving, confident, and curious and loved. His career was stable and rewarding, and Evelyn had become the partner he never expected, the person who saw all of him and chose to stay. "Thank you," he said to Evelyn over Ava's head. "For what?" "For opening that door. For not firing me, for taking a chance on us." Jordan's voice was thick with emotion. "For seeing us." "Thank you for walking through it," Evelyn replied. "Even though it was terrifying, even though it was the wrong door." "It was the right door," Ava interrupted, looking up at them with complete certainty. "We just didn't know it yet." Jordan and Evelyn exchanged glances over her head, both of them smiling at the 7-year-old wisdom. "You're absolutely right," Jordan said, pulling them both closer. It was exactly the right door. And standing there in the garden they'd built together, with the woman he loved and the daughter who was his whole world, Jordan finally understood that sometimes the universe did open doors on purpose. Not to test you or break you, but to lead you home. To show you that endings could become beginnings, that loss could transform into love, and that the wrong door could open onto exactly the life you were meant to live. He was searching for a bigger place now, something permanent, with room for all three of them to grow. Evelyn had started leaving clothes in his closet, books on his nightstand, pieces of herself scattered through his life, until the lines between his home and hers had blurred beyond recognition. They were building something real, something lasting, with the careful attention of people who understood the value of what they'd found. "Family dinner in an hour," Evelyn announced, checking her watch. "I'm making pasta. Ava, you're on salad duty. Jordan, you set the table." "Can we eat outside?" Ava asked. "Under the stars?" "Under the stars it is," Jordan agreed, watching his daughter run inside to wash up, listening to her happy chatter fade into the house. "I'm happy," Evelyn said quietly, standing beside him in the golden light. "Like, genuinely happy. I didn't think this was possible for me." "Me either," Jordan admitted. "After Sarah, I thought I'd used up my chance at this. But here we are." "Here we are," Evelyn echoed, taking his hand. "Building something beautiful." They walked back to the house together, ready to make dinner and set the table and share another evening of ordinary magic. Behind them, the garden flourished in the California sun, plants reaching toward the light the same way Jordan had reached toward hope, toward love, toward the future that opened before him with infinite possibility. He'd walked through the wrong door and found everything he never knew he needed. Found love when he thought he was done with loving. Found family when he thought family was just him and Ava against the world. Found a future that was bigger and brighter than any he'd dared to imagine. And it had all started with a mistake, an accident, a moment of panic and fear that had transformed into grace. Jordan looked back one more time at the garden, at the evidence of growth and patience and tending. Then he went inside to his daughter and the woman he loved, to the life they were building together, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. The door had been wrong, but what lay beyond it was exactly right. And Jordan Miles, single father, survivor, believer in second chances, was finally, blessedly, home.